If you've ever been treated like a burden by the people who were supposed to protect you and had to rebuild your dignity from the ground up, this story might find you where it still hurts. Subscribe for more stories about quiet revenge and healing. And comment below, have you ever been blamed for something they once called a gift? My name is Adrian, and when I was 22, my parents handed me a check for $100,000, no speech, no hug, just a folded envelope at the end of the dining table and a sentence I'll never forget. Use it wisely. Don't expect more. I had just been accepted into a master's program across the country. I wasn't asking for help. I had a scholarship, a part-time job lined up, and enough in savings to scrape by. But they said, take it. This is what family does. What they didn't say, what they didn't need to say, was this: we expect something in return. I used the money, but carefully, paid for tuition up front, lived in a basement studio, walked to class, never flew home, even for the holidays. I knew what that money meant to them. I respected it like it had teeth. But 3 years later, on the day I graduated, before I even crossed the stage, I got a message from my mother. We need to talk about repayment. Dad says you're established now. Time to honor the agreement. Agreement? There was no contract, no discussion, just an expectation hiding in the shadow of obligation. I called her. What repayment? I asked. The $100,000, she said like I was stupid. We told you it was for school, not a gift. You're working now, you pay it back. Over time? I asked. No, she said. All at once, or don't come home again. Thought it was a bluff. Until the locks were changed. Until I was removed from the family group chat. Until my younger sister stopped replying to my messages. Until I realized they'd rather erase me than reconsider what love without leverage looks like. For weeks I didn't eat much. I was working a new job, data analyst for a logistics firm, decent money. But $100,000 wasn't sitting in any of my accounts. I offered a payment plan. They refused. I offered to explain my side. They refused. I told them they never once used the word loan. They said, you should have known. And then came the line that did something to me, something permanent. We regret helping you at all. You've brought nothing but embarrassment to this family. Embarrassment, not because I failed, not because I dropped out, but because I didn't pay them back fast enough to make them look good. That was when something inside me clicked. Not bitterness, not rage, something colder, resolve. I told them I'd get the money. They laughed. And that laugh carved itself into my memory like a scar with a name. So I got to work. But not the kind of work they expected. I didn't just want to return the money. I wanted to return it in a way that made them wish they never asked. I started mapping out every weak point in their lives, their business, their social circles, their little financial empires held up by reputation and secrecy. My father was a man of influence, CEO of a regional supply chain firm. My mother handled PR, fundraisers, social image. Their entire world was built on perception, perfect family, perfect success, perfect children, and I had been their greatest liability until I decided to become their consequence. I opened an anonymous blog, not about them. At first, just stories. Stories about growing up in a house where love was conditional, where money came with strings, where silence was the only way to survive the dinner table. People read it. People felt it. I shared no names. But the details bled through, and the truth has a way of knocking quietly, until it doesn't. My father once told me that appearances are the armor of powerful people. It doesn't matter what's true, he said. It matters what they believe. At 15, I thought, that was wisdom. At 25, I knew it was a warning, because now I was the they, and I was ready to believe something else. The blog took off faster than I expected. Hundreds of anonymous readers, then thousands. Mostly strangers, young professionals, former gifted kids, people who had been molded like me, sharp on the outside, hollow on the inside. They resonated with the idea of being funded but never loved, of being praised in public but ignored at home. I wrote every night, posted weekly. No names, no addresses, just truth. At first it was survival, then it became strategy. I knew my parents read it. How? Because 6 weeks in, I received a message from a burner email account. You think people won't figure out who you're talking about? We gave you everything. Stop this now, or we will. I smiled when I read it, because it confirmed something critical. They weren't just angry, they were afraid, and fear meant leverage. I wasn't just airing pain, I was planting clues. Each post included a story only a handful of people could trace. A private fundraiser with a no single mothers policy. A church speech where my mother called poor people ungrateful. A business contract my father bragged about winning after bribing a city council member at our dinner table. All true, all documented in the shadows of my memory. I kept it subtle. Let their peers put the pieces together. Let their board members wonder. Let the whispers do the heavy lifting. Then, I shifted gears. Phase 2. Precision. I called in every favor I had from grad school. People owed me. A cybersecurity friend traced connections between their nonprofit's public donations and my father's company's vendor kickbacks. A former roommate who now worked in local media offered a quiet eyes review on their business dealings. A girl I dated briefly, now a legal intern, flagged 3 small compliance violations in their charity's tax filings. It was enough to get attention, not from police, but from the investors. Because wealthy people don't fear prison, they fear bad press. 3 months into my quiet campaign, the board of directors at my father's firm held an emergency session. It was leaked, conveniently, on a local business podcast. They discussed reputational risk stemming from undisclosed activity, and my father was asked to consider early retirement. They spun it as health-related, but I knew better. He lost control of the narrative, and without narrative, my father was just a man with numbers, and no one applauds that. My mother tried to clean it up. She posted a heartfelt message on Facebook. Families are complicated, but love always finds a way. The post got 103 likes. My blog had 72,000 views that week, including one post titled, "When the people who raised you also raised the knife." People started reaching out, old friends, estranged cousins. One even wrote, "You gave me the words I couldn't say when I left." Another, "I didn't know anyone else grew up that way. Thank you." I never responded, because this wasn't about attention, it was about balance. They took my piece. So I took back my place, and I wasn't done. By month 5, I had compiled a digital portfolio, timestamps, audio clips, screenshots, not to leak, but to offer. Because revenge isn't always burning someone's house down. Sometimes it's showing them the lighter and letting them light it themselves. I printed out one thing, the email they sent me demanding the 100K. In red ink, I wrote across the top, "Here's your return on investment." Then I mailed it, along with a cashier's check for the full amount, to their home address. I had saved every penny, every bonus, every freelance gig. Not because I owed them, because I wanted them to watch it leave their hands again, without strings. 2 weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten from my mother. It said, "You've humiliated us. Are you happy now?" I didn't write back. Instead, I posted a new blog entry. Freedom is when you pay the debt they used to control you and realize it wasn't love, just leverage. They stopped contacting me after that. They didn't call on my birthday, didn't check in on holidays, didn't even ask if I was okay. And honestly, that silence, it was the first honest gift they ever gave me. When they stopped calling, I thought it would hurt more, but it didn't. Because sometimes silence isn't punishment, it's proof. Proof they finally understood they couldn't reach me anymore. Not with guilt, not with shame, not with the thin thread of obligation they'd been pulling on for most of my life. I had cut it. Clean. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. People kept reading, not just strangers anymore. Peers, co-workers, distant relatives who found their way into my words like they'd been waiting for someone else to say it first. The blog stopped being therapy. Itchy became a movement, So I did something I never planned to do. I put my name on it. Adrian Hale, son of conditional love, architect of his own freedom. Traffic spiked overnight. I started getting speaking invitations, podcast interviews, emails from people who wrote, "I didn't even know I was allowed to feel this way." And for the first time in my life, I understood something powerful. Telling. Your truth doesn't isolate you. It gathers the ones who needed it to breathe. I used some of the money I'd saved to launch a small nonprofit. We called it Second Line, a nod to the jazz funeral tradition in New Orleans. The first line mourns. Second dances forward. We offered mental health resources for adults raised by emotionally abusive or transactional families, counseling referrals, anonymous journals, grants for first-year therapy. A private forum. Within 6 months, we had over 12,000 active members. I hired a team. Small, but passionate. Every one of them had a story. Every one of them had been told by someone who should have protected them. You owe us. Now, they were repaying something else. Kindness, empathy, sanity. I found myself again. But not the boy who needed approval. Not the student trying to earn love with grades and politeness. This version of me? He didn't apologize for taking up space. He didn't perform, grateful. He just lived, fully, on his terms. And then came the wedding. No, not mine, my sister's. The one who ghosted me when the debt fight began. She sent an invitation. No apology. Just a card with gold cursive and the phrase, "We'd love for you to come home." Home. That word again, like they still believed it belonged to them. I didn't reply. Not right away. But I didn't throw it away either. I let it sit on the windowsill for weeks. Stared at it every morning as I drank my coffee. Wondering, was this an olive branch or a trap disguised as one? A week before the wedding, Rachel, one of my staff at Second Line, asked me, "You gonna go?" I shrugged. Why would I walk back into a room full of people who taught me I was never enough? She smiled softly. Maybe to show them you no longer believe it. So I went. Not to reconcile, to witness, to show up. Not as a prodigal son, but as a man who no longer begs for table scraps. When I arrived, heads turned, my mother's eyes widened. Father blinked like he saw a ghost. My sister smiled nervously, as if she hadn't been part of the erasure. They didn't rush to greet me, and I didn't wait to be greeted. I sat near the back, alone, whole. During the reception, a cousin approached. He'd followed the blog, said it helped him walk away from his father too. I used to think strength meant loyalty to dysfunction, he said. I nodded. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away without slamming the door. At one point, my sister came to me. She looked different, softer. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded. No speeches, no drama. Just wanted you to know I'm not angry anymore. Her eyes watered. I didn't know how to choose between you and them. You didn't have to, I said. You just had to choose yourself. She nodded. I'm trying now. I left before the dancing started. Not because I was bitter, because I had my own music to get back to, and my own legacy to build. Driving home, I passed the old exit for our childhood house. I didn't turn off, didn't slow down, just drove. Wind in my chest, hands steady on the wheel, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is living so well. They stop believing they broke you because they didn't. They tried. But I'm still here, still rising, still free. 2 months after the wedding, I stood in front of a classroom filled with 24-year-olds, all eyes on me. It was the first time I agreed to speak in person at a university. The topic was emotional inheritance. I opened with a line I hadn't written down. You don't owe your parents a lifetime of performance just because they signed a tuition check. Silence, then a few nods. One woman started crying softly in the second row. That's when I realized I wasn't just telling my story anymore. was giving people permission to break the contract they never signed. After the lecture, a young man waited till the room emptied out. He looked nervous, like he was about to confess something that had been living in his chest too long. "Can I ask something personal?" he said. "Sure. Do you ever wish they'd apologized? Your parents, I mean." I paused, because the honest answer wasn't simple. "I used to," I said. "Every day. I thought closure came from hearing them say they were wrong." He waited. "But now," I added, "I realize the apology I needed most wasn't from them. It was from me, to myself, for believing their version of who I was for too long." He looked down, then up. "I needed to hear that." "Me too," I said, smiling. I walked out of that room with something I hadn't felt in years. Not power, not pride. Peace. The kind that doesn't roar. The kind that settles in your bones when you finally stop needing someone to love you the way they never learned how to. Back at the office, Rachel was waiting with a stack of grant applications for Second Line. Our program had grown. More therapists, more support groups, a weekly podcast that was topping mental health charts. She placed one form on my desk. "Read this one last," she said, smiling. So I did. It was a handwritten letter from a 17-year-old named Jonah. "I found your blog after I tried to run away. I didn't know other people had parents who use money like a weapon. I thought I was the only one who felt bought instead of loved. I want to help kids like me, not when I'm older. Now. I don't have a degree, but I have a voice. Please tell me that's enough to start." I folded the paper, closed my eyes, and whispered, "Yes, it's enough." That weekend, I took the train to a cabin I hadn't visited in years. It was the one place from childhood that didn't feel tainted. It used to belong to my grandfather, my father's father, who died when I was 10. He was different. He didn't talk much, didn't interfere. But when I was a kid, he'd hand me a compass and say, "Figure out which way is north, Adrian." Even when no one's watching, I think he knew. I think he saw how things were going to play out long before I did. I found the old compass in a drawer there. Still worked, still pointed true. I built a fire, sat by the hearth, and I wrote a letter. Not to my parents, not to my sister, but to someone I hadn't spoken to properly in years, my younger self. "Hey kid, I know you're tired, and I know you're trying to be good enough, quiet enough, useful enough for people who only measure love in invoices and expectations. You don't have to carry their silence anymore. You're allowed to choose your own name, your own worth, your own north. One day you'll stop trying to fix what broke you, and you'll start building something better from the pieces they didn't know how to hold. That's the real inheritance, and it's yours now. Love, the man you became." I burned the letter, not because I wanted to erase it, but because I wanted it to rise, to turn to smoke and ash and sky, to release it from the drawer of my chest where I'd kept it locked for too long. When I returned to the city, there was a letter waiting for me at my office. Handwritten, from my father. I knew the handwriting immediately. "Adrian, I heard you spoke at Stanford. Your mother found a clip online. We're not proud of how things ended. That's all I can say. I suppose this is me acknowledging we mishandled things. No excuse. Just a note. Do with it what you want. No return address, no invitation. Just a name, at the bottom. Dad." I didn't write back, not because I hated him, because I didn't need to anymore. His voice didn't live in my head now. Mine did. Clear. Certain. Free. That night, I made dinner for the Second Line team. We sat on the floor, ate tacos, told stories about the worst advice we'd ever received from well-meaning parents. Rachel raised a glass. "To Adrian," she said. "The man who turned a $100K debt into a $1 million legacy." Everyone laughed, but I didn't. Not because it wasn't funny, because I knew it was true. And that's the kind of wealth no family can take away. It happened on a Tuesday. I was clearing out emails when I saw the subject line, "We'd like to meet." It was from my mother. No warmth, no signature, just 3 sentences. Your father and I are willing to talk. In person. Let us know if you're interested. It didn't say we're sorry. It didn't say we miss you. It didn't say we were wrong. It just said willing. Like reconciliation was a negotiation. Like grace was a contract. I stared at the message for a long time, then closed my laptop. That night, I stood at the kitchen counter with a glass of water in my hand, the light off, the city breathing outside my window. I thought about everything I could say if I met them, everything I could demand, all the truths. I could slam down on the table like chips in a game I never asked to play, but I also thought about something else. My daughter. She's not mine, biologically. She's the child of my best friend, taken too early in a car accident. I stepped in when no one else would, when no one else could. That girl had her world torn apart, and somehow, she still wakes up every morning with laughter in her throat. She doesn't know half the pain I've carried. But one day, she might. And I needed to decide what story I would give her. Not just about what happened, but about what I chose to do with it. So I wrote one more letter, not to send, just to set something down. Dear Mom, Dad, you once said I owed you $100,000. I returned it, in full. But what I never told you is what it actually cost me. It cost me years of silence. It cost me birthdays spent alone. It cost me the kind of love that never made me flinch. You handed me a debt, but I used it to buy back my identity. I used it to build a platform for thousands of people who thought they were the only ones raised by quiet cruelty. I used it to create something beautiful from something bitter. You gave me pain, and I gave it purpose. So no, I won't be meeting you. Not because I hate you, but because I don't need anything from you anymore. Not validation, not apology, not permission. You don't get to witness the man you tried to unmake. That's the price of what you did, and I've paid enough. Goodbye, Adrian. I folded it once, placed it in the drawer with the others, and then I deleted the email, not out of spite, but out of completion. That weekend, I stood on stage at a small theater in Portland. We were celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Second Line. Behind me, a collage of anonymous stories. In front of me, a room filled with people who had crawled through fire and come out with their voices intact. I'm not here because I won, I told them. I'm here because I stopped losing to people who never knew how to love me right. Applause, tears, laughter. A young man approached me after. He had a scar down his cheek, eyes too tired for 21. You gave me language for something I thought would bury me, he said. I touched his shoulder. No one buries us anymore, I said. We grow through it. On the flight home, I looked out the window as the clouds broke open, sun glinting off the wing, and I thought, this was never about the money. This was about power, about who gets to decide what you're worth. And for the first time, I was the one holding the pen, not them. When I got home, my daughter ran to the door. Guess what? She shouted. What? I passed my spelling test. She held up the paper, 100%, a sticker that said superstar. I picked her up. Did you know, I whispered, you can be anything you want? She nodded. Because I have you. That night, I tucked her in, turned off the light, and sat at my desk one last time. I opened a new document, typed the title, Return on Pain. Then the subtitle, a story about what we're owed and what we choose to build instead. And as I began to write, I realized they demanded $100,000. But what they gave me, what they really gave me, was the push to become a man they can never own again. And that was worth everything.